We're back in the Holts gun room for the March 2025 main sale. This is a particularly good auction. We've got some really cool things to share with you, from rare rifles, some beautiful 28 gauge side-by-sides, some pretty punchy over and unders, and right at the end of this film, a particularly special pair of Boss over and unders. Let's go, guys. We're gonna open up with, I think it could be my favorite gun of the sale. Maybe favorite's a strong word. I think this is the best purchase of the sale for me, in my eyes. If I had some money, this is probably the one I'd buy. It is a Gruyere. It is lot 1518 and it is in at 3 to 5 grand. It's a 28 gauge, 28 inch gun with a beavertail forend, a Woodward grip, and a 15 and an 1/8 inch stock finished in wood. And I look at it with my eyes and go, a tasteful pad, we'd have it at the right length. The grip is really nice. It's just done well, fits well, and it just flows as a line of gun well. The beavertail forend on these 28s isn't an obtuse thing. On 12s it often can, where it swells out the side of the tubes, become just a bit of a lump. On this, it is delicious. As you know, I've had a bit of a fascination with 28s and, well, still do. I think a lot of it is just because they're dainty, and so the whole gun does come across a little bit more delicately. And yeah, there's obviously that little sort of 28 gauge thing in the back of your head that's more of a challenge or whatever, but mostly when I see this, I see myself walked up, close range shots, lightweight gun to carry. It's got 2 3/4 inch chambers. I don't know if it's steel proof, we're about to have a look. Probably not in a Spanish 28 gauge. 1/4 chokes. No, standard proof, so it'd have to be it's a 5-year prospect until you're putting bismuth through it, or in that time, perhaps we shall see something else come to bear for 28s. You never know. All in all, just a good, usable gun. 1 or 2 light handling marks, but pretty much mint. Brand new, what is this gun gonna set you back? Solidly over 10 grand. Articulated front trigger. It's a double trigger with a rolled edge on the trigger guard there, and flowery engraving, Art Deco flowery engraving? I don't even know the word for that, but it's classic Spanish with Gruyere Arms A-bar on a banner of scroll on the side. I can't help but just think it's nice. Not particularly unique, go and order one tomorrow. But if you don't want to wait, I'd save yourself a fortune. What a lovely gun. I'm a big fan. Doesn't need much more explanation than that. Next up is lot 1608, 3 to 5,000 pounds worth of custom Browning. There's always a good number of B25s in here of every grade, even the odd mint A1, but this particular one stood out to me as being just a little bit different with its engraving. Gold can be done very badly, but I really like this. I like the fact you've got the light border touches. I love the flowers, and I really like the fact that we've got some nice detail and even sculpting in some of the petals. Also, if you have a little look at the wings there, they are nicely engraved. The whole thing flows really nicely. You've also got some custom work all the way around the top of the breech here, and the fences are actually sort of carved in with little layers, little folds, all topped with a little gold bead. Engraving is an interesting thing, and everyone's got a different thing they're after. This might not be the gun that I'd choose, but I can really appreciate it. It's just nice. Not British in the slightest, but really nice.
Of all the sidelock makers, or those who are famous for making sidelocks, James Woodward is my favourite. This is probably as close as you get for me to the quintessential pair of game guns in side-by-side form. It's a 20 bore pair of Woodward sidelock ejectors, and they are absolutely stunning. As soon as I pick it up, I want to be in a grass butt.
I mean, you don't want much, do you?
No, it's just, I bet that's where they belong.
They are
absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful shotguns in the classic Woodward style with the classic fishtail safety catch, which is beautifully positive and
arcaded
everything about that screams quality.
Beautifully scaled in 20 bore as
Yeah.
well. This is one of those sort of pairs of guns that we've not got a huge amount to offer other than they're really, really nice.
They are, and they are quite rare as well. We don't often see 20 bore sidelocks. We see very, very few 20 bore sidelock Woodwards. You hardly ever find a pair of them. And you don't find them in this condition either.
This is the only pair of Woodward 20 bore sidelocks they've ever seen.
Yeah, these are the only ones I've ever seen. I've seen a single that was in epic condition that went to one of the great Woodward collectors because it was the one he was missing. And this is a pair of them that if that man was still alive, he would be here. But we're gonna just remember his taste by looking at these because it is the best of British gun making and it's just a joy to handle them.
And in the perfect kind of condition, right? You can see that somebody has used, loved, enjoyed and made a load of memories with it.
But they're not
just
abused.
Sat in a cabinet.
But they clean them properly every time.
Yeah.
They're tight on the action. There's colour still there under the flats of the barrel. It's just, they're not polished for sale. They're genuine, they're honest, they're beautiful, and they're in good order for what they are.
Honest is a great word for these.
They're absolutely glorious.
Oh, just every part of them is nice. They are, however, some money. That's always the problem. Lot 1392 is
£15,000 to £20,000, but we don't see them very often. That's why they attract that kind of premium price tag.
Almost feel like that's a bit shy on where they're going to end up.
Oh, look, if
estimates are funny things because inherently they're set at what their logical value should be. Most items, but I just can't help but feel like this is a worthwhile investment for somebody.
There are people.
Beautiful.
Yeah, there are people out there who will have been hunting for guns like this all their lives.
A nice pair of 20 bores in a decent spec. Yeah.
These will be answering the questions that they've had and have not been able to find anywhere else for the last 20 years. And occasionally they appear. These turned up on Saturday.
And we've joked about, turning up with the right thing, kind of removing any question of your sportsmanship and taste. I guess for yourself as much as anything else, right? There's a little uncertainty if you turn up with the wrong thing. You're never gonna turn up with these and feel like you haven't got the best guns in the line. And I know that's a really unimportant factor, but I know to a lot of people it actually is, right? Because the stories you choose to write, the equipment you do is kind of like all of a part of it.
Yeah.
With your life.
Yeah, you could make some amazing memories with these, just using these guns. You would have that feeling that we all look for when those of us who shoot and enjoy vintage guns, which is absolute quality in really good condition, just doing what we love and having that all-round experience that only really high-end quality gun making can give you when you get to shoot it out in the field. It adds an extra layer of special memory.
Yeah, and that's not to say, I should always qualify this, I'll never judge anyone, myself included, just grab a gun and go and have fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can do the same thing with a cheap gun or a less exciting gun.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Absolutely, of course you can. You don't have to spend big money. You just have to enjoy what's in your hands, but you can't fail to enjoy these. That's the point. It's not what other people think about what's in your hands. It really isn't. It never has been for me.
No, but sharing toys is quite important too, I think.
It is, but...
And if your toy brings someone else joy, I think that, for me, kind of does accentuate the joy.
Yeah,
a little
it can
bit.
do.
It's not everything, but it's a nice...
You've got to be comfortable with what you're wearing. It's not for other people to judge. You've got to enjoy that. And it is very much like
putting on a really... for wearing a beanie
hat. I may have done.
Yeah.
But it was a good beanie hat.
Thanks.
As beanie hats go. But this is a high quality tailored suit. This is of beautiful fabric, fit.
And on a quiet drive.
Exquisite.
Got something nice to look at.
Oh, you really have, yeah.
Yeah. It's always a tough thing looking at stuff like this. A little bit like the pair of guns we're going to look at the end, because there is not much to say other than, well, firstly, you know who Woodward is. We've documented him well.
Yeah.
And he is well documented. Well, the gun maker is well documented. These are just a perfect example. And so there's not much to say other than I hope you appreciate them too. All right, we have another 28 gauge side by side. This one comes in an orange covered canvas ABS case. For those of you who know what gun this is by the look of the case, well done. For those who don't, it is a 486 Mark Newson. This gun is a 2016 model with 28-inch barrels in 28 bore. For those who've not seen a Mark Newson, well, let's have a look over it. What it is, underneath is a 486 mechanically, more or less. A pretty bomb-proof side-by-side. But Beretta teamed up with Mark Newson, a pretty famous designer, and he redesigned it in line with Beretta to give it a more flowing line, an island safety catch, and when it came to the engraving, he took inspiration from the Asian roots of the pheasant, which is one of the most popular birds hunted in the world, and put an Asian-inspired engraving on there. For those who don't know, Mark Newson is one of the most famous designers of our time. He's worked with Ferrari, Louis Vuitton, Qantas, and probably the most famous thing he's involved in would be the Apple Watch. And I appreciate the Apple Watch is hardly like a groundbreaking design, but it is an iconic design, and that counts for a lot. It's got a 14 5/8 inch stock finished in its own wood. The colour is a little lighter than I would prefer personally, but you know, I don't think it looks bad against the large flowing lines of the silver action. It is hand checkered, and one thing I do like is you've actually got a rounded point at the bottom of the checkering there, a little bit different. Goes with the sort of rounded feel of this gun. There's not many hard lines on it at all, from the round island of the safety catch to the extremely rounded top lever. I just, you know, I think when I saw it in pictures, I thought that top lever stood out a little bit, and the safety catch, well, the safety catch could have been non-selective and blah, blah, blah. But all of the metalwork has been softened and rounded by hand to actually just make this work quite well. And yeah, the top lever design is a little bit out there, but I don't hate it. It works on this gun. It really does work on this gun. It is obviously an ejector, multi-choke with a full set of 5 chokes, and the gun has seen, well, it's in great order. It really is in great condition with the glossy finish on the woodwork. Single trigger, selective, as I've said, and, well, not much else to say about it other than it's just a pretty cool and unique toy. When I first saw this go in the catalogue, I thought, hey, there's not many opportunities to get these in front of camera, and, well, I really do. I just think it's a really cool looking gun. It's different, it has depth, it's 5-axis laser CNC'd, but there's laser engraving and there's laser engraving, right? We see some in this room and across the years that are done quickly and cheaply, and we've seen some that take a lot of time in the machine, but would it be nice to have it hand engraved? I mean, hell yeah, of course it would be nice to have it hand engraved, but brand new, this gun isn't hand engraved money, and this one's in at 10 to 15,000, so it's pretty, I say pretty affordable. It's often easy to get dragged up. I don't have a spare 10 to 15,000 plus commission going spare, but in the grand scheme of money that people have spent on guns, myself included, it's manageable, right? For a forever gun. I'd love to know your thoughts on this gun. It's definitely on the Marmite spectrum, right? I know some people who will love it and some people who will hate it, but I love the way the wood flows all the way around the action. I love the way that action flows back. And it's just a very smooth looking gun, especially in 28. Yeah, probably should look at something other than 28s, but I've got one more to show you later, and I'm not going to apologize for it. This is a bit of a rare beast, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
With provenance, even better.
Yes, it comes with an extract from the book, and it is made for Robert Churchill's wife, Rose.
And it is a Churchill, no less.
A Churchill pinless sidelock pigeon gun, over and under.
There's a lot of cool things about this gun. For me, the rib is one of the most fascinating. So it's a 25-inch barrel because it's a Churchill, and that was his thing.
That's their thing, yeah.
But you've got this sort of beautiful pointed back ramp, and then down the middle, it's not entirely ribless. You have a tram line.
It's specifically requested by her to be machined on the ribless top barrel.
And it's slightly tapered, which is absolutely fascinating.
Beautiful, isn't it? She had very specific requests. That was one. She wanted an ivory bead foresight. Obviously, we can't do ivory anymore. That's been replaced with a brass bead foresight. She wanted these scoops out of the fore end so that she could place her thumb accurately.
I'm glad to know that's not a new thing.
Specific in her needs. She also wanted a blue leather case with nickel furniture. She was that specific.
What era was this?
This is 1934.
Pretty stylish era.
Yeah, and she wanted it completed by the end of that year, January,
yesterday,
because she wanted to take it to Monte Carlo to compete.
Well, I presume when your husband's the boss,
then you get what you want.
you crack on. I love that forend, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
cool.
it's a bit short because I got long arms, but
Yes.
it is dainty, but it really does lock your hand in.
Yeah, we're not built the same figure as Rose was, and it's not the original stock, but yeah. So
thankfully, that makes it probably all the more exciting.
A little bit more
adult males.
Exactly, a little bit more saleable because of it. But yeah, no, a specific gun for a specific task, made for a woman who knew her mind.
And she was relatively good as well, I believe.
A successful competition shot. Yeah.
I mean, the Churchills were successful competition shots, and they were successful business people as well, from my understanding as well.
Yeah.
All pretty cool. The premier quality. How much is it?
So this is estimated at £6,000 to £8,000. Again, that provenance makes it more interesting, but the condition is really good. Yes, it's had a new stock applied, but it's got lovely traces of colour on the action. It's beautifully engraved.
And beautifully made as well.
Beautifully
you don't
made
see
gun.
too many Churchill over and unders, right?
No, you don't. And this is one with a direct connection to the family. So it's a lovely thing to have and to hold.
The team was saying earlier that this is the family that we can thank for modern sporting clays,
Yeah.
a lot of modern shooting understanding.
Yes, so Robert Churchill was more than the salesman of his generation. He was something of a visionary, and he envisaged clay shooting, which had previously been trap shooting, more along the lines of a round of golf, so that you would go to a stand and have some targets, and then go to a different stand and have a different set of targets, and again and again and again.
To make a day of it.
18 holes of golf versus 18 stands of sporting clays. Before anyone was really doing it. He wasn't the first to try it, but he was, as Robert Churchill, being the salesman he was the first to market it correctly and actually use it as something to attract people to his business.
Pretty awesome piece of history. It would be lovely to see it in original condition, but that would be significantly less usable, right? With
Probably
a 13.5-inch semi-pistol grip stock or something.
Yes, made for a significantly shorter woman. Yeah, it would be a totally different shape.
I guess from a modern sales perspective, the only downside is that it is a 25-inch barrel, but it's a Churchill, and ergo, that's the thing.
Exactly.
That's why you have it.
That's why Churchills have fans, because they like short barrels. Not everybody wants to shoot a 30-inch over and under. Some people want to shoot a 25-inch gun because they like the fast, instinctive handling that Churchill pioneered and really marketed hard.
Yeah, and it clearly worked for him.
It really did.
It's not often that we get a brand new maker to show you guys. And I say brand new, the maker's not new, but a name we haven't gotten to share before, and that is Ferlib. Ferlib, which is short for Libero Ferraglio, which roughly translate as freeing scrap metal. I think Ferraglio means scrap metal and Libero means liberate. So pretty cool, right? I mean, I think it sounds way more romantic, obviously, in Italian. They're a bit of a niche maker, more of a finisher than a maker from my understanding. Buying components from other people, my presumption with this would probably either be Fer or Fias. We'll have a little look in a sec, see if there's a stamp on it. This was made for Thomas Turner of Reading and engraved by Pantaghini Inc. The whole thing, lot 1681, is £1,500, which is not an incredibly large amount of money for a very pretty gun with an awful lot of hand finishing. A quick Google search gives us this on Ferlib. Ferlib was founded in the immediate post-war period by Ferraglio Libero. It doesn't sound like a guy's name. And if your name is actually scrap metal, that's the coolest name in the world. It's like rockstar name. Establishing itself as one of the first artisanal companies in Gardone Valtrompia, specializing in crafting high-quality rifles. Presumably they moved on to shotguns shortly after, unless this is directly translated and rifles just means guns generally. The meticulous attention to detail, all crafted by hand, soon became the recognizable hallmark of Ferlib's production, gaining recognition worldwide. The company's uniqueness also lies in its aesthetically original solutions, giving Ferlib guns a distinct and unmistakable personality. Presently led by Ivano Tanfoglio, this means this is a little bit old, this post, seeing as I know that he did some work with Rizzini on their 460, and then didn't he definitely worked with someone else, was it Famars, potentially? And now he works with Cosmi, who received the professional training within the company from the age of 14. Ferlib benefits from the knowledge and experiences passed down by previous generations. Sorry to interrupt, I'm just editing this and I went down a rabbit hole and spent about an hour researching Ferlib. Firstly, Libero Ferraglio is a fairly common name, or Libero is a common first name. Ferraglio is common in certain parts of Italy. Secondly, the company was founded in 1949, or thereabouts. Fairly early on in its tenure, a guy called Giovanni Bonzi got involved, and you will find some Bonzi and Ferraglio guns out there, potentially. Although, again, the details on this are hazy and from a translated gun forum that was actually fascinating. The Ivano Tanfoglio connection comes from him starting his career at the company, then taking over the company, which ceased trading in 2005, when Ferlib changed its name, or changed its existence, to Rizzini and Tanfoglio, because Ivano formed a partnership with B. Rizzini. Even now, that company no longer exists, and so, well, it is gone. It is finished. What guns are out there are all there are ever gonna be. They've made some interesting guns across the course of years, Holland copies, cheaper over and unders, some nicer looking over and unders as well. As I said, there's various models, including some I've found called the 5F, 6F and 7F, and that's put in F with the Roman numeral after, so FV, FVI and FVII. There's also a model called the Picasso, and I mostly filmed this so I could share that gun with you. This is one of the wildest looking things out there. Anyway, back to the film. It says everything's made by hand, you know, as handmade as it's going to be. There's not a guy sort of hammering barrels out. Handmade's an interesting terminology nowadays that people use, given that so much machinery is used and technology is used in the in maximizing efficiency, because to truly hand file an action and truly hand finish an action is such an expensive thing, and machine hours are significantly cheaper than man hours. What it is completely hand engraved. The stock is hand checkered to 32 lines per inch and is just absolutely immaculate. You can tell the stock is handmade. It's got this beautiful headwork actually. It's got beautiful little tips that run into the top of the side plate there. What's interesting, it's got this really raised bolsters around the side plate. They stick out a lot, which gives this little gun quite a lot of midweight. It does make it feel quite shootable. Ooh, interesting. Wow, that is a lot of metal in the middle of a gun. That's super cool. This is a Thomas Turner Benham model made by Ferlib, marketed in England by Thomas Turner of Reading. But inherently, the English name for once isn't the most interesting thing, but in fact the maker and learning more about them and discovering a little more about this gun is. Mechanically, the ejectors look classically like a lot of the Gardone ejector systems. There's no maker's stamp, but there might have been, it looks like it might have worn off a little bit, like the proof stamps are quite worn as well. The barrels are relatively lightweight for a 20 bore at 1160 grams. It's got 2 3/4 inch chambers, 70mm, and it's choked 1/4 and 1/2 on a 27.5 inch overall length. I presume there's weights in the back of that stock. I can't imagine that all of that, it could just be extremely dense wood with nothing taken out of it, of course, but that is bizarrely, feels great because you've got so much weight there, but actually it does balance a little further back than you find pretty much anything Italian. That's super cool in itself. The engraving is actually really nice. It's not the highest level of engraving, but what it is true hand engraving. And so I'm not gonna knock it. It's price point accordant, right? Obviously better could be achieved, but it is beautifully done. What you lack, I suppose, a little bit of depth and detail, which takes the supreme amount of time. I love the fact that it poses against this bold engraving, this bold scroll with the cut out background. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the woodcock flying through the trees. It could be overdone, but every time I see a woodcock flying through the trees and the trees all engraved around and into the scroll, I just think that's lovely. Straight hand stock, the line of which drops a bit too much from my eye, but I mean, we're not going to argue too much. It is unequivocally a good looking thing. To mount up, all of that drop you see is apparent at the top. My eye goes straight into the back of the action. So it's a low mount, it's a low comb. I haven't measured it up, but my guess would be lower than I need it. So if you like a low gun, it could be for you. But this gun isn't designed for clay shooting, it's not designed for that high comb style. So a low comb for a nice snap shooting, walked up gun is no bad thing where you've got a relatively loose cheek connection. All in all, it's definitely cool. Is it cooler than the quality? Well, short of ripping it apart and having a proper look inside, you never really know. The only place you can ever have a good look easily is the ejector work, and that certainly looks nicely finished enough. But like all Ferlibs I see, everyone's a bit different. It's a custom house, and so it's hard to sort of get a gauge on perennial quality. Either way, it's a very pretty gun for the money. Simon, when I discussed the guns you wanted to put on film and you mentioned this,
yes.
Firstly, it's a rifle, and
yes, that's not normally me.
We rarely talk about rifles. I think both of us see rifles, other than maybe like Lee Speeds and romantic sporterized guns of the day,
True.
as tools for shooting deer, and that's as far as it goes. And
yeah, I tend to be unromantic about rifles because I see them as a tool for a job and purely functional items with not that much decoration to be applied, other than the fact that the deer's going to fall over at the other end of it. However, this is rare and interesting, and when I walked into the gun room a couple of weeks ago and saw it on the rack, I went straight for it. I went, what the hell is that? Because I'd never seen anything like it, and the reason I've never seen anything like it is it turns out to be exceptionally rare. This is a Durst Patent 303 from 1892, I think it is, which was a military trials rifle. They sent this for trials with the US military. It was designed by a guy called Captain Murray Durst, who was based in California, and the Army rejected it. And then they sent it for trials with the US Navy, and they also rejected it. So it was not successful. Some of these were built in Britain by Grenfell and Accles, and this is one of those examples because this is from the Grenfell and Accles collection. And I just love the shape of the action.
So it's got a big helical magazine inside,
yeah,
that's actually built as a single piece action. So
yeah, and it gives it that really elegant shape to it.
It looks space age, doesn't it?
It does,
really?
and it must have been quite difficult to engineer. So it's an interesting snapshot of military history, which you'll probably never see again. I don't think I will.
It's an interesting thing, right, when it comes to military trials rifles, and we've seen a few in here that we haven't usually put in front of the camera, that often military trials rifles are unsuccessful not only because the design, in this case probably the magazine might be a little too convoluted for your average GI, but because this looks expensive.
Yes, it does.
Versus the gun they were actually shooting at the time in the end.
Yeah.
It looks expensive.
Yeah, I mean, military firearms tend to be squaddy proof and cheap to produce, en masse, and robust. That's what you're hoping for a military rifle. This looks anything but. This looks classy and elegant and svelte and really nice lines, and I imagine if you got sand in that magazine it would be an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
So probably not that practical, but an interesting and a beautiful piece of gun making history.
For a service rifle, it is pretty.
It's good looking.
I mean, obviously, patriotically, I think that the Lee Enfield is a very beautiful thing, but that's just patriotism. This is not bad.
Yeah, it's a lovely thing. And not normally my taste, but it's the shape and you can see quality when it's in front of you.
Farewell and adieu to you, Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu to you, ladies of Spain. For we've received orders to sail for old England, but we hope in a short time to see you again.
A flight of guns refers to a batch of guns made by a maker, one in each caliber. It's not like a pair or a trio, a flight. Whether that's actually the correct thing or whether that's something I'm misremembering, we'll never know. But I've said it now, and so who knows? In front of me I have an incredibly strange set of guns, and strange as in, well, I never thought I'd see this lot together. This is a batch of 5 AYAs. Number 1s, type Cs. These are 1Cs, which is a denotation of this particular engraving pattern on an AYA number 1. An AYA number 1, well, you know what an AYA number 2 is, right? It's one of the most affordable bomb-proof sidelocks ever. We've looked at them, plenty of people have looked at them. We've seen some really special ones and some significantly less special ones in the past. Imagine a number 2. So number 2 is denoted by having usually rolled engraving. It's pushed through this sort of heavy press. If you watch our Spanish Guns film, we actually went to the factory and saw how that's done. Some are hand finished, and you know, they've been making them for a very long time, and so there's a big variation in quality and styles along the way. But you get some slightly nicer number 2s with a little bit more hand finishing, and then you get the number 1. Better wood, much better finish, and complete hand engraving. Just more man hours spent regulating it, finishing it, and producing the best that AYA can build. These 5 guns were built between 1974 and 1979, which is a pretty good era for AYA. It was a time they were producing a heck of a lot of guns. They had a lot of craftsmanship and a lot of talent there in the factory, and so they could dip into it and really invest in making stuff like this. We got a 410, a 28, a 20, a 16, and a 12, all in 1C, all with pretty much identical features, all just running down different scales. Pretty cool opportunity as far as I'm concerned. The 1C has this carved large scroll engraving, which to the eye immediately looks a little bit Germanic, but actually if you look at a lot of Spanish engraving, this is extremely Spanish as well. Just usually we're subjected to the cheaper and less exciting variants. We're just talking off camera. I think a lot of the problem when it comes to this kind of engraving is that it looks quite simple. It's very smooth. It's not particularly detailed like in terms of shading or Bellino. But actually to do this perfectly and to create perfect rolled tops and perfect polishing without any deviation with beautiful carved background is just incredibly hard. And as we've discussed plenty of times in the past, often the things that look more simple are harder to do. There's nowhere to hide, right? You just have to do a good job. And these are beautifully made things. Remembering that they're AOAs from the 70s, of course we're not talking insane quality. You know, we're not talking the best of the best boss level. In them is that last 28 gauge I wanted to talk about. This is in at £2,000 to £3,000 for a Spanish best sidelock. It really is just a nice thing. The 410 is a little more at 3 to 5, and I think the 12 gauge is the most reasonably priced at about 1,500. They're all being sold as separate lots, not as a collection. I'd love someone to buy these and keep them together, but I understand that this 410 is the super desirable one, and it kind of goes up caliber by caliber in desirability, or losing desirability until you get to the 12. But even a 12 bore number 1 is a rare thing. You just don't see that many. Certainly not by comparison to the volume of number 2s that are out there. One presumes that's because doing special things takes an awful lot of effort and gets in the way of production. I think that's the same pretty much for every gun factory in the world, whether that's Holland Holland making something off-piste, it gets in the way of standard production because it's simple to just repeat processes and do sort of that process engineering, even on a hand-built scale. I think that's sort of what makes all of these all the more special. I'd quite like a bit of that 28 gauge, but not as much as I'd like to buy them and keep them all together and then never shoot them, which will be a shame. So I'm not going to do that. You know, not because I don't have the spare money to buy 5 Hayway number 1s and leave them in the cabinet. When it comes to bargains and potentially undervalued guns, box locks are the thing. Since the beginning of time, it's fair to say the sidelock was the pinnacle and the box lock was viewed as the lesser gun by many.
I'm gonna call you on that one, because in the catalogues from the gun makers from around the turn of the century, their highest grade box locks were sometimes more expensive than their highest grade side locks.
So that's a modern concept.
It is a relatively modern concept, and to be quite honest, it's driven by snobbery.
Okay.
It was the London trade trying to differentiate themselves from the Birmingham trade and said our London side locks are better because they look prettier and they're nicer handling, and they came up with all these reasons why having lock plates down the long axis along the sides gave it better handling.
Because they'd invested all of their
time, effort,
based on best London side locks.
Patents
sense,
and
right?
registration of patents and everything else.
And the concept of someone doing it simpler, better and cheaper.
Yeah, the lever cocking box lock was a simpler mechanism that was arguably more robust, cheaper to fix if it went wrong, but didn't have this artist canvas that went all the way behind the detonators and under the top lever for the engraver to do his thing. So they were slightly sneered at by the London trade, even though all of the London trade were buying in box locks from Birmingham and selling them under their own name, which is some of the examples we've got here. At its lowest level, at its entry grade, a good quality, in good condition box lock looks roughly like this. This is a Thomas Bland, retailed in West Strand in London when Bland's premises were there. It is a Birmingham-made box lock, non-ejector, 28 bore,
yeah.
with colour on the action, and in good condition, tidy-ish.
Is a nice gun.
But it's all the basics. So
Yeah.
you have no Anson pushrod, you have
Snap
a basic
is.
snap forend, you have no ejectors, you have no pistol grip, you have no rolled edge trigger guard, you have no real embellishment engraving-wise other than border beading, you have a basic ramp safety, and everything is very, very basic.
It's a truck gun.
It's built to be strong, and it was actually built probably for the customer who walked into Thomas Bland's and ordered a pair of side locks and said, I'd like something for my nephew as well, what have you got? So they were satisfying the market. Then you go up through the gears, and you go to, let's do this one first, because this is a little bit more interesting. This is Thacker of Church Street, Worcester. So this is a 16 bore box lock of higher grade. Now, the things to look out for when you're looking at different grades and going up through, it's obvious the engraving is really nice quality. It's possibly of a particular school, although we have no records for Thacker because he was a retailer of Birmingham finished guns, but he had that done to a very high standard. He also, things to look out for, now you have an Anson pushrod, which is higher grade.
Very nice.
And a nice
metal on front instead of a horn.
Exactly that. You also have bolsters.
That's lovely.
On the fore end as well. That is an indication of a higher quality box lock. You also have little hole inserts where a teardrop would be, or a drop point.
Nice.
Instead, it's a buffalo horn insert. Again, an indication of attention to detail and quality.
Customising still a Birmingham box lock.
It is still a Birmingham box
Customising
lock.
a Birmingham box lock to
a
the
higher
nth degree.
standard, and that's a very, very attractive gun.
Aesthetic standard, potentially.
Yeah.
Internally, we don't know, but...
Yeah, but again, I mean, they're all roughly the same design on the inside. They're a barrel cocking box lock. So when you open the barrels, that action pushes the big hammers back, and the hammers and the firing pin are one thing.
With very big, fat pieces of metal
Exactly.
inside.
Big, bold, wide, big surface area parts, very little to go wrong. So, and then we go further up into this one, which we're going to talk about later, or depending on where it comes in the film. And we have other little elements of quality as well. So we don't have the bolsters on the fore end wood, but that's neither here nor there, because the reason I picked it out, you've got a rolled edge trigger guard, which you find on high grade side locks.
Scroll back action.
You have a scroll back action, which is harder to head up and more work is required, and it looks more attractive. You also have very, very fine engraving on this Westley Richards as well. And just, it looks like more care and attention has gone into it, but that is a higher grade gun only in finish. It's almost exactly the same as the basic model. Yeah. It's just
they might
more
be
highly embellished.
taken to a slightly higher finish internally, but the mechanics are going to be the same.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. And very, very few of them were chopper lump barrels. Most of these are dovetail barrels. So they are mass produced in great numbers and finished to varying degrees. What you're looking for is good quality barrels, tight on the action, not off the face, so no daylight between the standing breech and the breech of the barrels. And just something that, if you want attractive, you're looking for the original finish as well. But actually, they are robust guns that are grossly undervalued, especially in non-ejector form. You can pick them up for under 100 quid, depending on the condition.
It's the best step onto the English gun market because there's no risk.
Yeah.
It's just an enjoyable thing.
Yeah.
For £500, you'll buy a nice one.
Yes.
For £2,000,
You'll buy a really good one.
you're buying something that, in quality, is as good, if not better, than a sidelock. Probably.
Arguably. Arguably. Now, there will be a lot of people who say, oh, no, sidelocks are better for this, and this reason. But actually, these days, the fewer people there are around to fix guns correctly, properly, so that they last another 100 years, the box locks are far more robust, arguably.
Yes.
I would suggest that they're more robust, so perhaps more future-proof.
Looking at those box locks, I thought we should look at this Westley Richards a little bit more. It weighs £5 15 ounces. Given that the 486 Mark Newson was £6 1 and the Gruyere was £6 5, this 20 gauge is lighter than both of those 28s. But, you know, it's a British gun. This is lot 1558. Built in 1991 and is in at £2,000 to £3,000, which puts it, in my head, at not a bit of a bargain, a proper bargain. It's a little bit loose on the face, the slightest bit loose, and that's about the only thing I can find that's wrong with it. It's got 28-inch barrels, 2 3/4-inch chambers, and a 15-inch stock that is very, very classy indeed. As box lock 20 bores go, I don't think I've seen much nicer than this. The engraving is beautiful with Bellino birds on it. We've got a partridge, but you've got that beautiful shading in the background, the light shading of a field and the sky and the clouds. Then out of the screws, you've got some corn coming out of that one. And on the other side, you've got a pheasant, and out of the screw, you have a pheasant tail stuck in the grass. This is gun art. I can't help but just be drawn to how finely this gun is built. And given what Simon was saying about box locks, there is something that appeals to me about them, and always has, in that it is a little more subtle, a little more robust. It's got the fine details of that scroll back action, meaning the flat metal there has been carved out for no purpose other than to show quality, because it's significantly harder to stock properly. You've got beading around the fences. Oh, it's just pretty. Lots of original colour. By some original colour, I mean that originally this gun would have been case colour hardened, would have had those vibrant case colours on it. Over time, that colour wears. The more use it has, the more friction it has against it, the more those colours wear. When you see a case colour hardened gun that is silver, or even worse, polished silver, it just takes away from its originality. The better the colour in a gun, generally the better condition it's in, and ergo, the more desirable it is. The line of this thing is just spectacular, isn't it? It's got a little duck on the bottom, but those little vignettes of game surrounded by medium scroll. I mean, it's just tasteful, it's classy, and you know, it's the sort of gun you could very easily fall in love with for a price tag that's not brutal in the slightest. The gun is choked at improved cylinder and quarter, so not tons of choke, but for your average game gun with a 20 gauge, exactly what you'd buy this gun for, right? 20 to 30 yard pheasants and partridge. It's nice. This tickles both of us in equal measure, I think, doesn't it?
It does. This is broadly an idea that you and I have discussed in the past, but somebody's actually gone and done it, which is to take a really nicely made single-barreled English gun and turn it in a shotgun and turn it into a rifle as well. So it's got a 16-bore original barrel from when it was made in 19 or something like that. Albert Barnes of Ulverston, nothing fancy.
Just a provincial Northern Lake Districtian.
Yeah. That's just one of those provincial gun makers. But whoever has done this has had a 7x57R barrel
Single shot
made
barrel.
for it in the 1990s
With
to go on this action.
Zeiss 6x32 with swing-offs.
But the real secret of this gun
I'll let you do this.
is how they made this rifle barrel fit onto this original forend. So you don't want to sacrifice the original forend because that is how you get the overall look of the gun. So whoever has done this has gone to a huge amount of time and effort to produce, if I could ask you to hold the gut rifle for me, is to produce a wooden insert that makes the forend clasp work for that barrel.
Instead of just making a new forend.
Instead of just making a new forend with...
Super clever.
It's just a really lovely touch, that. And it's delicate, but it works. It works.
Yeah, but once it's in there, it's not delicate, right?
No,
it's
it isn't.
delicate if
And
you
it's
throw it
held in
across
place.
the living room. So.
Exactly. And it makes the ejector work.
Lovely
as well.
push bottom forend removal as well.
Yeah.
It's really tactile.
It's a lovely thing. Really nice thing. So that's caught our eye.
7x57R, totally reasonable caliber as well. Do everything with that.
In a classic single shot.
How does one know when buying a second-hand rifle at Holts that's going to be accurate? Or just based on condition report and bore quality?
We will look down the bore for you, but with vintage rifles, we don't know what the rifle was regulated for. We don't know the bullet weight it was regulated for. It's not often stamped or in the records of what that gun was made for. So anybody buying a vintage rifle, the onus is on you to test it before taking it out in the field. This is particularly with big game rifles. But I don't think there's too many professional hunters out there who would let you go in the field with an unproven rifle without getting you onto a target first to find out if you and your rifle work in conjunction.
Hey, I love vintage guns, but I think if I was against a dangerous game, I'd want something modern. And
you've got to exercise a degree of common sense here. So all of our rifles are sold as seen. We do not have time to test fire all of these rifles. So it's an auction, and you have to exercise a little bit of judgment and common sense.
7x57R, not a hot round.
No.
This kind of gun, probably not done a lot of work.
No.
Look down the bore, looks probably quite good.
That is a good bet.
And what's this, 1,500 quid?
I think it's 1,015, yeah. We just got to be slightly careful putting that back there.
But
it's a lovely thing to have.
For your special occasion rifle.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not every day, but it would be really good fun to take out.
Simon, this screams a bit of you.
It is a bit of me, isn't it?
It's Scottish, it's old, it's got something wrong with it. You go for it.
It's glorious. It's a glorious piece of gun making, this. It's a John Dixon, son of Edinburgh. Everybody by now knows I'm a big fan. Top lever, skeleton bar in wood, 16 bore hammer gun from 1882.
Lot 1505, what is it worth?
So we have it estimated at £800 to £1,200.
I feel like the Dixon fan club will perhaps push that higher, or?
They will push it higher, yeah. You need to be very much at the top end of that estimate to have any chance at all. It's not perfect, and guns of this age sometimes have things wrong with them that you need to factor in. The top lever spring on this gun is broken, but other than that, it's in really quite good order. So the top lever spring is not a big fix.
To send it to Dixon, what, 400-ish?
It's probably something around there, yeah, so factor that in. But other than that, the fact that it's in this condition, because the problem with bar and wood guns, they are incredibly difficult to stop.
A bar and wood gun, by the way, we should point out.
Let's do that, shall we?
Is where the wood goes all the way up and around the bar of the action. The bar of the action is what we just call the action nowadays. What that means is you end up with a floating trigger plate and semi-floating lock plates. In this case, they're actually connected in. There you go, sorry.
So, that's fine. Yeah, so Dixon called their bar-in-wood guns skeleton guns. That was partly to differentiate themselves from the London trade, who called them bar-in-wood. Because James Purdy and Sons came up with the bar-in-wood concept. It was incredibly difficult to stock, because obviously you've got to make sure that all of this metalwork fits exactly into this much more complex stocking procedure that goes on up here.
And there's not a lot of wood in there.
There isn't.
That's why they break.
No, that's true. And normally they are cracked somewhere here, usually between the finial here and the knuckle of the forend. There's usually a split. This one doesn't have it, so it's in good order. But they always called, Dixon's and McNaughton called them skeleton bar in wood. They didn't tend to use the bar in wood name because it was somebody else's.
Because, as we said, the Scottish makers loved to be different.
Yeah, they do. They like to stand out by using different terminology, but also their guns are slightly differently built in that they're incredibly high quality as a rule. Some have had a harder life than others, as I've said previously in other places. But I like to think of the fact that they use the skeleton term is because the action underneath is the skeleton and the wood on top is the flesh on the bones.
It's a really beautiful way of looking at it, right?
So that's maybe where they came at it from. I don't know, that's my conjecture.
Usable in any kind of way, shape or form?
Absolutely, yeah, that'll take modern nitro cartridges, 16 bore, 2.5-inch chambers. So, and 16 bore is a highly capable load. It's broadly ignored by most people because they feel that the cartridges are too expensive. But
usually just put off by the owners talking about it and saying how bloody good it is.
I'm sorry, I thought that was 410s. Didn't you do a film on that?
Literally anybody who doesn't own a 12 bore.
Exactly.
Right, this is it.
So yeah,
striving to be interesting.
So yeah. I actually am having a 16 bore rebuilt currently by Jamie Blacker. Bill Blacker and Jamie Blacker have very kindly volunteered to restore that Thomas Wilde 16 bore of mine. So I started off with a 16 bore. It was my very first gun.
You won championships with the damn thing.
I won small competitions with it, not championships.
Minor championships.
So yeah, it's an unloved caliber. Everybody, you see articles regularly saying 16 bores can have a comeback, and it never really happens. It might happen now in the world of non-lead shot.
Because if you want a sub-gauge that still performs,
yes,
20 is about where it starts to be good and affordable.
Yes.
So the 16 can
16
fill a new
might
niche.
fill a gap there. So we'll see. I mean, this is going to be bismuth all day long because it's the barrels. Okay, they're not original barrels. That's important to say. This gun was rebarreled in 1900 by the makers.
Yeah, that actually makes it more attractive, doesn't it?
Yeah, and actually it was originally 28-inch. It's now 29. So you can see the top lever spring issue there because it sits and doesn't quite close, and we have to push across for now. But yeah, rebarreled in 1900. So now 29-inch, which Dixon were famous for. They didn't pioneer 29-inch barrels, but they considered it the happy medium between the old days of black powder needing that extra 30-inch long tube to burn the powder correctly, and then the advent of nitro powder meant you didn't have to have such long barrels to make sure the powder burnt correctly to get the pressures right. So you could shorten the barrels, and the happy medium in the Scottish gunmaker's eyes was very often 29-inch. And having shot 29-inch in over and under and side by side, it's lovely. It handles really beautifully. There is something about the difference in weight obviously in the middle of a fulcrum. The more you do there and the more you do there is going to alter the point of balance. It's going to alter the handling. 29-inch seems to be a very, very sweet spot from my perspective anyway. Everyone's different. Everyone wants their guns to handle in a different manner, but 29-inch is worth considering.
Next up, I have earmarked these two to share. There's actually four. Lots 1368 and 1367 are two pairs of Connecticut Shotgun Manufacturing Company, CSMC, A10 Platinum Ornamentals. I'd put the pair of 12s back because the 20s are just nicer, you know, and they're both in at the same money of 8 to 10. Both pairs were nitro reproved in 2024, at least that's when they were approved. One presumes that's also when they were purchased, but I guess we'll never know. Short of phoning up CSMC, and I'm sure they'd be very helpful. These guns are laser engraved. The pattern is very nice, the depth is not. And a lot of that is to do with the fact that this is not the top grade of A10. They obviously, like all gun makers, can push things through the roof price-wise with a lot of hand engraving. This is one of their simpler patterns, is I think the fairest way of saying it. For those of you who aren't aware and haven't figured out by the name, they're made in Connecticut. New Britain, Connecticut. We actually went to their factory 3 years ago, and it was a fascinating experience and definitely a wild insight to American gun making. All in all, there's a lot of passion in the workers there for putting this together, but it's worth mentioning that although this looks pretty good, it is made to a price. They are an affordable over and under shotgun, especially when you consider that they are American made. We have a selective safety, and actually one of my favourite things about this gun, on the 20 bore, it is such a low profile safety catch for having a selector in it. It doesn't ruin the lines at all, which some selective safeties can. It's a 4-pin side lock with an internal bridle and, I believe, an internal stock bolt too. It's got a full-length trigger tang, grip cap, single adjustable gold trigger, interchangeable drawers on the barrels, and 2 big locking lugs that hold it shut in the back there. Interesting thing is I didn't think we'd see many of these over here because of the manufacturing process where they actually weld the ribs, the mid and top rib on. Inherently they have to put another process in to be able to import them to the UK, where they then lap out any potential marks from that welding. The internal bore on this is flawless. Wouldn't pass proof otherwise, right? Certainly not 1 year ago. I quite like this. The stock spec, it looks nice, it handles well, and comes up certainly well enough. Hidden on the side of the lock plate here is a hidden detacher, and it's really nicely hidden in there. Obviously assembled and then engraved assembled, and so it covers all of the edges. You unscrew that, push, take the lock plate out, and it will help you service it, clean it, and sort it. Not a bad piece of gun making by any standards. That's right there. Boom. Pretty cool, eh? If we're going to pick one little issue, it's that this number 1 gun is £6.7 and the number 2 is £6.8. So there's an ounce of difference there. A lot of that could be to do with the wood and how one's dried and the other hasn't, but nothing you couldn't get sorted if you wanted them perfectly matched. I've often thought with pairs of guns, most shooters are probably not that aware of half an ounce of difference. Love to get them both, shoot them, and see. Be cool. It's fair to say that of the many films and many hours we've spent talking, we've not really done anything that isn't guns, and Holts does a lot of things that aren't. And we discussed off camera, if you want to access gun history and don't have a heap of money to spend and just want something curious and to start, I don't know, enjoying gun history without spending loads of money, firstly there is some cheaper guns, you can buy some accessories.
You can.
And these ones are particularly cool.
Yeah, so I went slightly down the rabbit hole cataloguing these. This is 2 different lots. You've got lot 1029 and 1030 here. They come from the same vendor, but they refer to 2 different parts of the country and 2 different people. So these are game cards.
Oh, they're all Sandringham.
From Sandringham.
Oh, lovely.
This is from one family, 2 different people it seems, because you've got Colonel Henry Cater and you've got Major I think it's Harry Cater as well. The really interesting thing is, when I was going through it, this is between 1944 and 1952 when Colonel Cater went through the ranks as Lieutenant Colonel and then became a full Colonel. But there is a patch in between here in October 1945, but bear in mind the Second World War ended September 1945. Mm-hmm. October 1945, they had a full 6 days shooting here at Sandringham, almost as a celebration of the end of the war, because they didn't do much during the war, I'm sure. And Colonel Cater shot all 6 days. Now, I enjoy my shooting. I don't think I could do 6 days in a row.
I mean, if I invited you to 6 days back-to-back at Sandringham, I have a feeling you might say yes.
Probably. You'd muster up the strength, I'm sure. But it is an interesting collection and a snapshot, and there's some very, very interesting names in here. This is a family affair in that we've got the Duke of Edinburgh, you've got David Bowes-Lyon, who was the Duke of, he was related to, obviously, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was a Bowes-Lyon. So that, I think, is her brother. You've also got the Marquess of Salisbury, Lord Porchester.
I mean, the big name is at the top of the list.
And the King is at the top of the list, yeah. So he was in really quite exalted company here. You also have Mountbatten listed here. And numerous other names of the day as well. So it's a very interesting collection, a snapshot of history from a guest, and you can see the difference between the royal ciphers at the top. You've got George VI Royal cipher there, and you've got Elizabeth II's there.
Cool.
So this is pre and post Queen Elizabeth II's coronation.
Not a great deal of money?
£200 to £400.
Pretty cool piece.
Because they're an important piece of social history for this part of the world. And they're lovely things. Just a really nice thing to have. Funnily enough, as we've discussed before, I don't keep a game book, but I do keep all my shooting cards.
So it's basically the same thing.
It is essentially the same thing without the story.
I don't keep all my shooting cards because I'm not the most organised, but everything goes in the book.
Yeah.
Because you can't lose a book quite as easily as you can use.
Well, this is true.
Card.
Now, moving on to 1030, which is the book. Books generally. So this is a collection of late Victorian and early Edwardian game books. There's some interesting entries into these. One, I think it's this one. We'll come to this one in a minute. But this one is around 1900. So the first entry is 1904. And as I was going through it, I was looking at the addresses and what they shot, thinking, quail? You shot 46 quail? And then thinking, oh, okay, yeah, it's in Karachi, in Pakistan. So that was an insight. And then you get over the page a little bit. He comes back into Wootton and then Middleton in Wales. A few names there. Small day, small numbers of guns. And then the really interesting thing for me was here when I looked at the bag entry was 1. And I looked August 1910, Kashmir, Badrikut. Guns were T.N. Whaley and self, 3 days, 1 march from Gulang, it looks like. Number of guns, 2. Bag, 1. Entry,
Panther.
1 Panther. Length,
7 foot, width,
51 and a quarter inches. And the entry is Panther appeared at the end of the last honk on second day. Misfire with first shot. That would have made you notice. But got him with the second shot as he went off uphill about 150. These things fascinate me. They always have, because you're getting a brief insight into how an era of shooting functioned.
It takes you to their day.
It does
as well,
take you to their day.
Which is kind of nice.
Yeah. So misfire, and actually, there's another misfire recorded from the same an entry about 6 months later. So he clearly had a problem with his gun or his ammunition, one or the other. But if you're chasing dangerous game, you probably don't want that to happen. You don't want to be relying on your second shot. That's a very, very early game book, which I couldn't find any information on, but 1870, 1878, 1864. Just beautiful, that scroll script that they all got taught at those schools. But this one is the lead book of the lot, and HJT is on the cover. This belongs to a chap, once I'd done the research on it, called Harold Jack, as he was known, Tennant. And he was the son of one Sir Charles Tennant, who bought a big estate in Scotland, Inverleithen, and the estate's name was The Glen. Mm-hmm. But it also recounts his shooting exploits with other people and at different estates. And in one of the exploits, what we will find is August 13th, shooting at Tulken, number of guns, 1. Bag, 72 grouse, 2 ptarmigan, total 74. And the entry simply reads, shot alone, well. Now that is classic Victorian and Edwardian. Not proper. Big me, not big upmanship of your own, not a full review of your self-performance, just a short entry in several words showing how well you did. The other interesting thing about this game book is a little telegram card that is glued into the side, and it details a single day's shooting between 5 guns, the Tennant family, a Captain Wolfe Murray, 2 tenants, Jack Tennant at the bottom, and Lord Ribblesdale at the top. Now this card details, and it took me a while to work this out, the number of drives. They did 7 drives that day, and then there's a total of each gun, what each gun shot, and a handicap applied.
Okay.
Now, having just come back from Spain, looking after a couple of clients out there,
where numbers are everything,
and you have a secretariat behind you counting everything. It was interesting to then, my first day back at work, catalogue this and find a secretariat effectively counting everything and applying a handicap to it. When you turn the page, or you turn the card over, you see estimate for handicap, and clearly everybody was asked to nominate what they felt the other guns in the party handicap should be. Now, it could be that Lord Ribblesdale was being fluffed a little bit here by his colleagues by being given a 19-bird head start, because everybody's estimate of his ability with the gun was given 20, 25, 10, 22 and 18. They add them all up, they take an average, and his handicap was 19.
Are we presuming that this is all right, so if we're aiming for 80 brace and there's X amount each, we're going to give you a 25 head start, and then hopefully at the end of the day we'll all have shot the same number. So whatever you shoot plus your handicap, we're hoping that we bag it that everyone has shot the same share.
It could be. There's any number of guesses to be applied here, and it's taken me a little bit of time just to try and get my head around exactly what they were doing. But it seems they were assessing each other's ability. And at the bottom, Jack Tennant doesn't get a handicap. He recuses himself from the competition because he is the host. Yes. So he is the scratch handicap and ends up shooting the most with Captain Wolf Murray.
To his own admission, he shoots well.
So yeah, it's a fascinating insight into the mind, the sporting mind, and the sporting endeavours of Victorian and Edwardian gentlemen. So there you go.
Look, not the sort of thing that's gonna bring you great joy in terms of looking at it on the wall or shooting it, but just an epic piece of actual shooting memorabilia, research piece, sort of thing someone should buy yourself and then photograph and make public source so that we can all enjoy it. Some philanthropy, Simon.
Well, why not? Well, maybe we should.
That's super cool. I sort of think you could write a very interesting book assessing and sharing, but probably 3 people would buy. But
well, I'd be one of them.
What a lovely thing. This sail has got some pretty special engraving, and this is actually one of my favourites. It's lot 1467, a Holland and Holland Royal Deluxe. It's in at 5 to 7 grand, which is about where it should be, to be fair. What makes this one special is 2 things. Firstly, the engraving. The engraving is a Art Nouveau style scroll with mythical creatures all over it. It just stands out. I love a Holland House scroll. There is nothing wrong with a Holland House scroll. It's just typically Holland. But occasionally, when the engravers are let out of their box and somebody has a crazy enough idea, something like this is born. It's the sort of thing you'll never see its like again. And that's what is special about these more custom model deluxes. I'd love your opinion on it, right? Is this a better option than a house scroll? I guess the beauty of a house scroll on a Holland is that it blends in, it's timeless, and it's relatively easy to sell to any enthusiast. This one is a little bit more out there, but the carving around the bolsters, the top lever, the side locks, and the floor plate are all just so unique. There's so much going on. I spent 10 minutes looking at it earlier and new things were still popping out to me. I just can't help but feel drawn to it. And a lot of that is because of key point number 2. It's got new barrels. These are those new barrels, although it comes with its originals. This action dates back to 1912, so it's a relatively old girl. But to have nitro-proofed barrels in 2001, 28-inch barrels with 2 3/4-inch chambers, really makes this gun all the more usable. They are thicker and heavier than the originals, which it comes with. The originals are 30-inch and weigh a bit less. With these barrels on, it's £6.14. With the original barrels, it's £6.11. Thin barrels are all well and good in terms of weight reduction, but it does come in the modern era of modern, hotter loads, and certainly with steel on the horizon, of a few more, not even safety concerns, but ammunition choice concerns. This new barrel is choked 1/4 and 1/2, and if you sent that off and had that half relief to 1/4, you should have no problem putting modern standard proof, not high performance proof steel through this gun, which means that this gun is going to go on for the next forever, which is, well, it's nice, right? Not that steel's a big concern for many guns, but if you're shooting a lot, it's nice to have a gun that you know is just going to take it. That, mixed with the fact it's got Holland and Holland written on the side, which is one of the most famous, best gun makers in the world, this is a proper desirable piece. It's unique, it's cool, it's usable, and it's just not a risk. And as much as most of the things that we look at nowadays, in the early days it was all about looking at, oh, cool Holland Royals and Purdy's, we're always now, or certainly I'm always here looking for the weird and wonderful and sharing that with you guys. This is weird, wonderful, but also pure class. There is a mystery third option of positive news as well. That is that it has a replacement stock. There's positives and negatives to that, right? From a collectible standpoint, that's not ideal. But as I've said, this is definitely more in the usable collectible category than the purest collectible category. It's a 15 1/8 inch stock with pretty solid dimensions. It's got a bit of cast on there, but I don't mind that. A leather covered recoil pad at just under 1 inch. It's a little short for me, but it's going to be perfect for someone out there. I can't help but think that this is a damn fine purchase. We talk about quality a lot. No, you talk about condition. You talk about condition a lot.
Condition matters.
This is as mintaculous a pair as we've seen in a while.
So if you were going to take a benchmark of what original condition looks like, this would be close to original condition. Look, it's not wrapped in this original tissue paper, but the colour hardening here is original and it's almost all there. This is incredible. A pair of rook rifles by Holland Holland in 250 semi-smooth bore.
Well, I don't know, they used to compete at it, right? So there's a chance that this wasn't just for shooting rooks and rabbits, it was to go and compete with your chums.
Absolutely,
great birthing status.
Exactly, quaffing gin on the veranda and shooting your rook rifle at small targets and
at ranges that we deem as nothing today, but was quite a lot with an open sight with a little black powder cartridge.
Exactly that.
I know our American brethren love a percentage. Do you work on like percentage covering, percentage originality, or is that not a thing?
We don't tend to work on percentage coverings. We tend to say more descriptive than that rather than trying to assign a number to it because...
I guess you don't have a picture of it when it was born, so it's...
No, exactly. So it is slightly awkward to do that, but you know what's original and what's recoloured. You tell by experience. You can see whether the engraving has dulled down because it's been reblacked or new colour has been applied, and it's just... You can see if there's a little bit of pitting as well, and the pitting is under the colour that's been applied, you know that's not original. So it can be ascertained by enough experience looking at these things. But yeah, I mean, it's just really unusual to see a rook rifle in this kind of condition, and to see a pair, a true pair.
Pretty incredible.
Is, possibly unique.
A 2 summer long fad for whoever bought them, went and had a play and then picked up a different sport.
Well, they may have done, but actually the rook rifles, as you know, went out of fashion as soon as 2.2 long rifle came in, and it killed it. 2.2 rimfire killed the rook rifle, stone dead, and people started boring them out to 410, which is what we mostly see.
Which is not a shame because it keeps them alive, but it's kind of nice to see something in original.
It's nice to see the original, isn't it?
And it's obsolete caliber.
Yeah, so you don't need a license to own these.
That's even cooler. Every sale here is individual, right? It always has its own individual flavours.
Yeah.
Some are more about sort of generic quality, and some, a bit like this one, there's a lot of real cool things that you will never see again. And I think Lot 1700 is one of them.
Yeah, it's one of the privileges and the beauties of working here at Holts is you get to see stuff like this that you will never normally come across. Particularly, you won't see one in quite as good condition as this. So this is Felix Jager and Co. It's a 32-inch side-by-side with a raised rib, 2 3/4 inch chambers. It's just a big, chunky
pistol grip,
pigeon gun.
Single trigger.
Yeah. But in really good condition and also really nicely made. So this is 1934, between the wars, but it has got much of the original colour hardening still on it. It's got these beautiful carved serpentine fences that then flow into the side clips. You've got these feathered breech ends. It's just all round. It's good quality.
Rare to see a beaver tail forend that flows nicely into the gun.
Yeah.
But this really does work aesthetically.
It does. It's a very pleasing gun to look at. It's a little bit too short for me, obviously, because this is I'm 6 foot, and this was built for somebody less than 6 foot, but it is the kind of side-by-side that I like to shoot, which is a nice long barrels, tight chokes, and reasonable weight up the front end. But it's a really good example.
One can assume, just given the size of it and the fact that it's German, is you're not going to have any problems with it either.
No, it's going to be robust.
It's not a risk.
No, it's going to be solid, robust, and dependable, and it's in really good order. Can take modern cartridges all day long. Good competition loads as well, and it's just a good-looking gun for 1,000 to 1,500 quid.
We made an entire film about German guns
We did.
and what value they are. You put an English name on a 32-inch single-trigger pistol grip side by side.
Yeah.
You're going to be fighting a lot of people.
Absolutely.
This serves the same purpose, whilst also being a little bit more interesting and unique potentially.
Yeah.
And, you know, allows you to go and research a whole new thing.
Yeah, and it's got some traits that we see on modern American guns as well. This ornate feathering to the back of the checkering as it bleeds into the head of the beginning of the cone
Very
underside.
Remington.
It's very lovely. It's very Remington, you're right.
Or maybe I should say, it's very Jaeger.
Very Jaeger first, exactly. Greener style crossbolt, nice and strong, big, solid, single trigger, 70mm chamber gun.
The colour is lovely. I love the gold herald on the
Sets it
bottom.
off really nicely.
You know you could go and do some damage with it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of guns in here that you don't feel that that's the case, but if you want a user,
Yeah.
you could use this.
Yeah. That would be one to take down to the Hurlingham Cup for helis.
It's fast for a 32 inches.
It is
I
as
know
well.
the stock's
Yeah.
short, but it does feel like
Yeah, but then,
actually
you know,
really good.
Sporting guns and trap style guns, you don't want too long a stock for that kind of. You're much more
You want to
over your
dominate
gun.
it, right?
Yeah, you want to be head forward and over it. So it's a different style of shooting, different stock shape for it, depending on what you like and what you feel confident with.
You could always, I was going to say something that would hurt you then. You could always have it restocked. If you're buying it as a user, and as long as you kept the original stock to put back on.
All right, I'll let
someone
you have
could
that one.
What would you rather? Someone restocked this and kept the stock original, or hackified it to make it work?
It's a good question. Probably restock and keep the original stock so we can go back to original at some point.
There we go. So, I'm not that bad.
No, I know, but you caught me unaware with that one.
Fell right into my trap. Yeah, that's the sort of gun I'd like to take out and have
Yeah.
a shot with, actually.
Good thing.
I reckon, I feel like it would be good.
Yeah, you know it would.
That's half the battle.
Yeah, I mean, you have to fall in love with guns to be able to shoot them well, I think. Certainly. The ones that I'm a bit not sure about, I'm never ever going to shoot that gun well.
Confidence is key, as we've discussed.
75%,
right?
yeah.
Knowing you can attack a target and get it done
Yeah.
is a big deal.
Well, you settle that part of your mind that gets in your way. If you have confidence in what you have in your hands, you have answered most of the questions before you've even called pull. All you then have to do is get the technical aspects right, hopefully without thinking too hard about them, and swing it.
You can't shoot well with an ugly gun. There you go.
No, but you
You
can.
heard it here first. As long as you love it.
But as long as you love it.
We have saved some of the best until last. I mean, it's hard to say best because there's so much exciting stuff that we've seen, and to everybody, we're all looking for a different grail gun, a new toys.
Yes.
You don't want to belittle some of the stuff we've seen, but these are the most expensive
They are.
and the rarest.
They
all up there.
they are. You'll be a long time waiting for another pair of guns to come along like this. This is a pair of Boss & Co. 20 bore over and under game guns.
Made in 2006.
Yeah.
With an estimate of £100,000 to £150,000. Which seems a lot until you think this is including VAT if you order them new, best part of $500,000
Exactly.
and a 5-year wait.
Arguably, we're not. You know, the waiting times difficult. It depends on the level of engraving you want. It depends on the custom options that you want as well. So they vary, but they'll try and complete them for you to this standard.
And they are rather delicious in terms of finish, right? There's no stone unturned. The engraving is one of the interesting things about this, in that it's not house boss style, like the last 24 we looked at
Yes,
together.
the house style is very tight rose and scroll work with 6 roses in ovals on the action themselves, and they look quintessential game guns. But this is a bespoke order, which all high-end gun makers will do, and Boss & Co. clearly have done it to the very best standards, because that is what they do. And it's engraved by Andy Miles, both these guns, in bold acanthus work, and it is, it's an incredible piece of gun making. It is the zenith of British game guns, was the creation of the Boss 20 bore over and under, single trigger.
You mean that?
Yeah, probably. It's arguably. I mean, there will be people in the comment section who will, give their own opinion, and it is very subjective.
So I wouldn't disagree. When people say, "What's your dream gun?" It probably would be a 32-inch 20 bore or 28 bore Boss over and under, because I don't think there's a finer piece of gun making in the world.
That is true. There are other guns that take my interest, but if you
no doubt,
if you looked for the quintessential gun for grouse, for English partridge, for pheasants, traditionally done, because this is not a pair of guns for shooting stratospheric pheasants. That's not what they're built for.
20 gauge lightweight set of barrels is not your choice over 40 yards.
No, exactly.
Really.
This is two game ones where you look at the covey of English partridge coming over the hedgerow 22 yards away, and you go bang, bang, kill two, change guns, bang, bang, kill two more. Mm-hmm. Two right and lefts in a row. That is what these are produced for.
Fast, simple, beautiful. And
beautiful, graceful, elegant shooting.
Extremely nervous to even handle them, given their rarity and the fact that they are so clean.
They're in exceptionally good condition, and they're an incredibly rare pair of guns to come onto the market, to be honest. So we're fortunate to have them, and so will the lucky winner be.
It's one of those things that if you had all the money in the world, you saw them come up,
this should be on your list.
I mean, if you don't own a pair, why not, right?
Yeah.
They are just a thing. And there's not much else we can talk about, given that we've looked at Bosses in the past, so we appreciate all of the finery.
Yeah.
Just a bit of gun porn, isn't it?
It is.
This is poster.
It is poster gun.
And the engraving style is definitely out there.
Yeah. Well, it's not everybody's cup of tea. I mean, if you like the traditional rose and scroll, you may not go for the bold acanthus. But this is one man's custom order to his specifications, exactly what he wanted. And actually, it suits a lot of people. People want 30-inch barrels. People want longer stocks. People want the semi-pistol grip stock and the single trigger. So you can't... He's gone for
a very reasonable spec.
Exactly that, yeah.
And the real thing about a gun with this engraving, you're never going to see another one, whereas you will see another house style more than likely.
You might. I wouldn't say will, because a lot of these end up in private collections to be loved and used by those, and they never come on the market again because they're handed down.
They're in every stand at a clay ground. Sorry,
well,
that's not what I meant, of course.
You don't see these on stand 5.
Hey, if you could afford to shoot these on stand 5, I think you've arrived. That could be the point at which you go, yes, my clay gun.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing.
They are.
The case is equally beautiful. As a piece, there's not like this deep history to them, so there's not so much to say other than...
Yeah, they are built to an exceptionally high standard that this company have based their entire business on. Best guns only.
Yeah, I mean, we did a film on it.
Yeah, we did.
That's worth a watch too. Simon, thank you very much again for having me and sharing your knowledge on all of the things we discussed. Guys, thank you very much for watching. For more information on all these guns, head to the Holts website where there is full descriptions, and if you really want, they will send you full condition reports, fully detailing out all the good and bad points about it condition-wise. Other than that, well, I look forward to seeing you at the sealed bid.
Yep, we'll do that next.
Thanks, mate. Thank you for watching, guys. This channel is made possible by our amazing sponsors. You can find out more about them in the description down below. And if you want to support the channel, you can join as a member. You get loads of extra content, well, some extra content, and occasionally we hook up and go clay shooting together as a membership group. If you don't feel like joining today, we really appreciate you watching and subscribing. Have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed that bumper Holts video. It was pretty good, actually. We covered some great stuff. There's some guns in there I will remember forever, as with every Holts auction. For those who want a little bit more, there's actually a members video with Simon looking at makers you should know about, and, more importantly, a fake Holland. Once again, thanks for watching, guys. What would you like us to look at in the sealed bid?